We're confronted today with an important reminder of what we were made for, who we're meant to be. Jesus reminds the Pharisees that the Sabbath was made to serve man. And so we have to place the love of God above obedience to Sabbath tradition. And I think that's something that comes very easily to us for some things. We recognize pretty quickly that placing money or power or other worldly things in the center, as if we were made for them, is not the right way to live. It can be a little bit harder when we start to think about good and true and holy things. When we start to say that we need to live for our family, when we need to live for doing some good thing we decided to do for God. Make that the very, very center. But even that can become almost an idol. And we see that with the abbot Saint Anthony, one of the Desert Fathers, who really went throughout his life trying to purify himself of anything other than the love of God. He started by getting rid of his wealth, but saving enough to be able to care for his sister. Then recognized that he was being called by God to even let go of what he had left, and he trusted God entirely, giving away everything else and entrusting his sister to the care of a group of sisters. He then went off by himself to pray, and when he got a reputation for holiness and people started to gather around him, he started to worry that he was becoming a little bit conceited about it. And so he went off into the desert by himself, where he wasn't going to be surrounded by worldly praise. He knew very well what he was made for. He was made for prayer and worship of God. And he found his joy in it. He found his life's meaning in it. That's an important thing for us to remember as people who, for the most part, are not called to such a great and perfect surrender as St. Anthony did. We're not necessarily going to be giving up everything we own and all our connections. But we too have to remember that we live for our relationship with God. That has to be the center. That has to be the focus. That is why we were made. So we have to avoid letting anything else become the center of our lives. It can't be the pursuit of money. It can't be the pursuit of popularity. But also can't be other things that seem a little bit more meaningful. It can't be any sort of political ideology. It can't be a devotion that we start to see as being so important, so part of who we are, that we are placing it above that recognizing Jesus' face in the people around us. That's what the Pharisees were doing. Being obedient to the Sabbath was a good thing. Jesus doesn't criticize it. But in letting it become such a focus that they were willing to use it as a club to beat the disciples over the head with, they were missing the point. God gave the Sabbath as a gift, something that allows people to have that time they need for rest, for prayer, for spending in the in the relationship, in the connection with God. And here, the Pharisees were twisting it, making it not so much about being prayerful as just avoiding doing any sort of work to the point of absurdity. Let's make sure that we are constantly praying about all the elements of our lives so that we recognize why God gives us the specific gifts He gives us and are able to live our lives focused on that relationship, knowing that all the other things are made to support it and that we were not made to support anything other than the love of God and the grace dwelling in our hearts.